he and I had a wonderful conversation back a couple months ago, and we've been planning for this and excited about it. And as a lot of you know that are on, any of you on live, most of our watchers come in as replays, and every one person we have live will get 100 sometimes within the first couple of weeks as replays. So we kind of keep it timeless. I'm not showing in the background. It's actually an overcast day here. I'm in Boise, Idaho, or Nampa, which is a suburb. Rinaldo, where are you at in the world today? What's
Santa
behind you?
Barbara, California.
All right, he's in Santa Barbara. I was telling them while you were taking a little bit of a break there that that building is iconic. So tell everybody about that building behind you.
So that's the county courthouse here in Santa Barbara County, and it survived the great earthquake. And because it did, and people love the architecture so much, they said, let's make the rest of the city look like this when we rebuild it. So the look of Santa Barbara, which is that whitewashed sort of hacienda, early, kind of like early California look, is exactly what it looks like around the town now. And it is, they did a height limit in Santa Barbara. So for many years, you couldn't build higher than that observation part. There's only been two exemptions to that limit, height limit. So you have a very Mediterranean looking town, which I love. And that look that you're seeing right now is exactly what I see out our windows here at my office.
So tell everybody, let's start with that. You are a long time Santa Barbara a resident. And are you call it, is there a name? Are you Santa Barbians, Santa Barbaraans, or anything?
Santa Barbans? I think somebody probably calls us the Santa Barbarians, but I don't think that's true.
Right.
No, I think we all go by, we're just from here. I got to tell you, we are so blessed to be from here. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Wayne, but Earth Day started here. And it was a direct reaction to the first Santa Barbara oil spill in the 60s. And that led to Earth Day, and it led to us being able to stop more oil wells getting put in. And to this day, Exxon has been trying to bang down the doors to pump more oil, and we've so far been able to hold them back, although it's touch and go right now. But we have a very good county supervisor group. We have a good congressman in terms of the issues. So we're very environmentally oriented here, which is interesting because this used to be Ronald Reagan's favorite town. In fact, there's a Ronald Reagan museum here to this day. And it's now evolved beyond that to something much more eclectic and much more progressive.
One of our regulars in the audience said hello from Clover, Virginia. Hello to you, Alicia. I graduated from a competitor school to UC Santa Barbara, which is UC Irvine, in 1973, and I was very heavily involved in the green movement of the late 60s. And I even there's a LA Times. I was on the front page of the LA Times, locked up to the gate, chain link fence gate at San Onofre nuclear power plant. I handcuffed myself to the gate, and there were a whole bunch of other people that did it too, and they were all in the picture. But that was a time in either 71 or 72, I don't remember, it's not important, but when there were oil. Remember when you had the oil that came into shore? What's the beach right down by UC Santa Barbara? There were oil spill, there was like blobs of black oil coming on shore.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it affected the whole shoreline. It wasn't just UC Santa Barbara. And to this day, many, many years later, we will get a residual. You'll walk along the beach, even as far south as the harbor. And you'll, at the end of your walk, go, oh my God, what's the bottom of my feet? It's like little oil bubbles still are there. They don't go every day, but they are available. Back to your San Onofre story, though. One of the things I'm very proud of, the World Business Academy is primarily a think tank since 1985. And what we're really well known for is basically helping to transition the consciousness of business to being more supportive to the societies from which it springs. So responsibility, if you can see, sharing the vision, building the network, healing the planet. That's been our motto since we started in 85. And the reason I share that with you is we don't often do things which are out there in the world. San Onofre was one of them. We have several times been asked to provide legal and business support services to local groups. So we were asked to get into the San Onofre thing because we have a very, very, very deep background in nuclear. In fact, my first book on nuclear was published by Simon and Schuster as a college textbook on nuclear. So, and that goes back way back in the day. And I'm sharing that with you because we took an active role and we were probably the party that was able to get that closed permanently. And the reason is we had enough expertise to analyze why so much radioactive material shot up so quickly. So it wasn't a slow leak, it was a burst that caused the two guys in the control room to freak out and hit the panic button. And they stopped the entire, didn't even call the head office. They just pushed the button and stopped the reactor, which, as you know, if you do that casually, it's at least a 30-day to restart. So they don't do it casually. So we got into it. We said, oh my God, what these guys did is they cheated on their permit, because the permit says that if you're going to replace a critical element of a nuclear power plant, you have to go back and get it recertified so that they know it's safe. Well, the Edison company conspired with, I believe it was Mitsubishi, to change the nature of the heat exchanger. Now, for your listeners, a heat exchanger can be many different kinds of devices, but in a nuclear power plant, it's a $650 million part. And it's the part that has tiny little fingerlings of glass that are resting in, nestled into each other. On one side of the glass is the dirty radiator water. On the other side of the glass is the clean water that drives the dynamo and the steam that creates the electricity. What they did is, in order to extract an additional 12% of profit, they lied to the authorities and said that they were going to replace the old one with an identical new one. And that's not true. It turned out in the evidence that what they did is they shaved the amount of glass in these fingerlings. And so they didn't realize that that little bit of difference could cause what's called cavitation. And cavitation is the sudden bursting of all of those glass little fingerlings. All of a sudden, all the nuclear water washes in to the clean water. And of course, instantly, it's now nuclear water. And it went up the flue. And people don't realize how much it put out. It put out a lot of, because even in the 3 or 4 minutes that it was happening, or 5 minutes, it was just shooting nuclear elements. So we were able to prove that, and we got the plant closed permanently. We were also took a lead on the San Onofre, the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, had a deal with the state. The state turned on us at the last minute and ended up going forward. But we did stop a peaker plant in Santa Barbara that was 1,000 feet from a school, grade school, spewing carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxides at that grade school.
Rinaldo, I'm going to ask Mark to put something up. Mark, put up a map of Southern California on take my image out and let Rinaldo keep talking here. And Rinaldo, once he gets it up, you'll be seeing it. Point out where the places you're talking about are: Santa Barbara, San Onofre, Diablo Canyon, for sure, at least those three. LA, you'll see it all in the context.
And we also, I'm going to point out something that we did in Ventura County, but those are the only 4 times recently that we've actually gone in as lawyers, as scientists, and said, wait a minute, we know what's going on here. We'll figure it out. And so I brought the biggest expert on nuclear power plant, basically in the country, who understood heat exchangers. Okay, so are you seeing my arrow on that? No, you're not. Okay, so I can see on your map the word Santa Barbara.
He's getting it focused. Mark, you've still got, there you go.
There you go. So start with Oxnard just for that. So you see where it says Google Maps, Thousand Oaks, Ventura, Oxnard. You see that?
Yep.
Oxnard was a community of approximately 75% people of color, mostly brown, some black. Very low income community. They built a peaker plant many, many years ago, like 25 years ago, on the only beach in that town. And they put a fence around it so that none of the kids in that town could go to the beach. And so a bunch of us from Santa Barbara, that the academy led down there, we testified at the hearing to tear down that, which they were going to anyway, and not replace it with another one. And we brought 2 or 3 busloads of white guys like me. So we knew we'd stand out in the audience. And when we each got our couple of minutes, we had decided what we're going to say in advance. And I got up first and I said, you would not even consider putting this plant on the beach in Ventura. Now you can see how close Ventura is to Oxnard. Ventura is a middle income community, not a low income. Oxnard's low income. So you wouldn't even consider putting this on the beach in Ventura, let alone in Santa Barbara where the rich people live. So what are you doing to these people, these kids that can't get to the beach? And so we presented them with a map of how you could produce 350 megawatts of solar energy. On the map, every single solar panel was located so you could see where it was and how it fed into a common system. And that 350 megawatts was identical to what they wanted to put as a new peaker plant. And we said, you can do this green. The Public Utilities Commission holding the hearing, as they usually do, held against us because they work for the utilities. We did the internal appeal to the legal department of the PUC. They held against us. And we appealed to the full, the very full panel, the full board of PUC. And they ruled against us, which was really surprising because you see on the map, you see where Santa Barbara is to the left, way up beyond Ventura. We had successfully closed a peaker plant in Santa Barbara in that grade school literally 1 month earlier and gone through the same steps. Lost at the original hearing, lost at the appeal, went to the full PUC, and the full PUC actually went with us and closed that peaker plant down. Again, I think it's because Santa Barbara is where a lot of white rich people live, candidly. But we won that one. 1 month later, our appeal comes up on Oxnard, and they shot it down. In fact, they wouldn't even let us put into exhibit the 350 megawatts of solar. So here's something that happened the first time in the history of California, probably will never happen again. Whenever the PUC adopts something that has coastal provisions and energy provisions, it goes to the California Energy Commission, which is a very small body. It's got just a handful of people compared to the PUC, which is huge. Within 2 days after the decision in Oxnard, to their credit, 3 of the 5 members of the California Energy Commission said, we are turning down the PUC's decision at this time because you did not allow into evidence that there was an alternative using solar energy, which you refused to even consider. Therefore, we cannot abide by your decision. That's never happened before. Because that's like Goliath telling, that's like David telling Goliath to put down his rocks. I mean, it's crazy. You never heard of it. And they fought each other for about 4 or 5 months. It was a huge regulatory battle. And eventually, the California Energy Commission won. That peaker plant's gone. The peaker plant in Santa Barbara, gone. San Onofre closed. Now, you had asked about.
Go down to Mark, go south past, keep going down further, and I'll show where San Onofre is.
Keep going. I'll show where San Onofre is.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. You're close. See San Clemente. What? Stop. Now back up. Right. Back farther. See where it says San Clemente? See where the
5
highway goes right down to the coast? That's San Onofre, right down there where it right in there. Yeah.
In fact, it's right on your map. It's where the bend in the green starts.
Right where the bend in the green starts. Correct. And now Diablo Canyon. I'm going to let
go north.
Rinaldo, because I know kind of where it is, but it's north. So
go
now
north.
go.
Yep. Go north.
Quite a bit north, Mark. So upwards. Yep. Now it's on the coast. So keep the ocean. Don't go inland. There you go. Yep. Keep the coast on the edge.
Keep going.
Quite a ways. Past where we were when we started.
Yeah, keep going.
Keep going, Mark.
It's just south of San Luis Obispo, just to give you some idea.
Yep. Yeah.
Keep going north. You're a long ways yet. You're probably 30 miles away yet.
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting close now. Okay, wait, hold a second. Right, wait. You're getting very close. I'm going to say it's go down south. You're a little bit too far now.
Now go down. Yep, it's
down
right.
a little bit, and it's right there. It's right where the bend is. You can't. There's no population around it, so the road doesn't go through it, and it's an isolated area intentionally. But it's right up there along the coastline. Yeah. Anyway, the problem with Diablo Canyon, which we provided endless reams of information, it sits on 5 active fault lines, any one of which had been identified would have prevented Diablo from being licensed. Number 2, 98% of all the fish kill in California occurs at that one plant. Number three, that plant has a very embrittled reactor. How we know this is because every reactor, when it's built, they attach plates to it and they pull one of those plates every 5 years to see if the plates are embrittled, indicating if they are, you should check the main reactor core. They haven't pulled a plate in 10 years, to the best of my knowledge, and don't want to. It might be 15 by now. So we fought to have it closed because, unfortunately, the pattern of wind from that plant downward, it blows in and south, which means it would hit Gaviota, Santa Barbara, Goleta, and Ventura, all the way down, conceivably as far as Los Angeles, because the wind is what drives the pollution. We believe that that plant is a clear and present danger, and we can't get them to close it. In fact, most recently, they ended up giving an additional 11 billion federal dollars to that plant, 1 billion California dollars, and they've extended its license, I think, another 20, 30 years. It's already 40 some years old. It's past its useful life. So it's a very dangerous condition, the most dangerous condition probably in California, and one of the most dangerous in the world for a nuclear reactor. And that California cannot and will not act on that is quite remarkable. So I just want to share that with you, that as green as we are in some ways in the state, in that way, that one way we are not green. And I'm sad about that. That was a long digression. I was just trying to say to you that the Academy.
No, that's fine. Let's go back to the Academy and your long-term relationship with Dennis Weaver, and
Right.
with the relationship with the Institute of Economics, who is obviously our parent entity, and why this webinar goes on as it has now for almost 10 years. So tell us about the World Business Academy and you and your relationship with Dennis.
Yeah, well, the World Business Academy started in 1985, and the goal then, the purpose was to shift the consciousness of basically business leadership, to see that it was responsible, more like a trustee, that responsible for society, not just to rip off as much money as they could get. And so we always were looking for what was the healthiest way to help business understand its responsibility to society, because you spring from a society as a business, and you want to take care of that society you spring from. If you don't, you're going to end up with losing your business. So we had three goals. One was to shift the consciousness of business leadership from that of a predator to that of a steward, because you act differently if you think you're responsible. So stewards are responsible. We wanted to secondly shift the consciousness of young people going into business, particularly our business schools. So we've always had a very active presence in business schools, so that young people see themselves entering a noble profession rather than a jungle, because you don't give yourself permission to do things in the temple that you can do in the jungle. The third one was to shift the consciousness of the people at large so that you would put your money, your buying power, where your deeper values were. And we just had a great demonstration of that just recently. Look what happened to Jimmy Kimmel and how fast it got reversed. That was consumer buying power that triggered that. When Disney saw that they had more to lose by basically knuckling under to an administration that wanted to basically cap his free speech, the public said, don't do it. We'll stop taking your cruise ships. We'll stop going to your theme parks. They started discontinuing Disney streaming, which was struggling to begin with. So that the Disney Corporation understood there is another side to this conversation, not just the side of the moneyed interest that you'd like to represent or the political interest you'd like to represent. Now, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I've been an independent since I started the Academy in 1985. But I'm very, very much against business having egregious power and using it improperly. I'm for business doing it properly and ennobling the society that they serve. In the process, they will make more money. And we recently had a way to prove that, which I could share with you. So we've been proving it in the marketplace that the companies that adhere to what we call sustainability values outperform the general marketplace, because we started an ETF We had Solomon Brothers manage it. They still do to this day, 8 years later. And we said we're going to put companies in there that basically follow these principles, and we're going to compare them every year against the Russell. And every year for the 8 years we've had it, we've beat the Russell. Cumulatively, on average, we beat it by 10 to 13 points. And that's in up markets and down. And that's because everybody who gets noticed by us as a leader in their field is somebody who is doing something employee centric. So they're taking care of their employees. They usually are doing something positive in at least one other area. And oh, there's Deepak, yeah. So Deepak has been a fellow of the Academy for 30 years. We have many, many tremendous fellows. And I met Dennis many, many years ago when he first, let me see, I think I met Dennis in the McGovern campaign of 1972, if I'm not mistaken. And the only 3 stars in that campaign were him, Warren Beatty, and his sister, who we all love. So the 3 of us, 4 of us, got to know each other there. And and Dr. Leonard Nimoy, Spock, was also in there. I shouldn't forget him because he and I almost got in a car accident in a snowstorm one night. Anyway, so we stayed in touch because Dennis was an ardent environmentalist. We clearly have been environmentally interested since the onset. And Dennis started doing these homes where he was putting caves, basically, and we thought that the concept of an innovative style of architecture, which we do study, and if you want, we can talk about the different ones we've looked at, including rammed earth, straw bale, I could go caves, I mean, you could go on. But what Dennis did was he took a bunch of tires. So a thing that everybody knows is a very bad thing to keep throwing away into the landfill. And Dennis wanted to find another use for them. So he stacked them up in front of what would be your home and lived in his particular case. And said, this is another way to build housing. And in the process, use up a lot of these old tires. Unfortunately, and I told Dennis that after I saw the first one, I said, Dennis, I think you're off-gassing. And we checked it, and it looks like it could be a significant amount. And if the air is not moving quickly, it's coming right into your cave, so to speak. And he accepted that problem, except that seemed like a good piece of advice, but he was pretty far down the stream at that point. And I just thought he was a great guy. We only bumped into each other a few times after that, but I had a great fondness for Dennis, still do, miss him. And he was a genuine human being, and he cared.
That place that Rinaldo was talking about is in Ridgeway, Colorado. The earth ship is the word that people started in these structures. The earth ship part of it is a great idea, which is take advantage of the 60-degree temperature that there is as you get anywhere 6 foot below the surface in our planet. So build your structure, but don't use tires, and that's a horrible use for that. But straw bales or rocks or a whole bunch of other kinds of things could be used. So gabion walls are where you put a lot of rocks into a container that's maybe like a wired fence around it, and then that could have been what he did. Instead, he used tires.
And by the way, I like to tell people about rammed earth because most people don't know about rammed earth, and they say, "Gee, rammed earth, does that really hold up over time?" And I like to point out the entire Great Wall of China is built with rammed earth.
It's rammed earth, yeah.
And so, yes, of course it holds up. You got to know what you're doing. But rammed earth doesn't off gas. It's extremely stable. The problem is you have to have the right dirt composition in the location where you want to do the rammed earth. I was recently asked to do an ashram as a freebie. The Academy does a lot of freebies up in Northern California. And unfortunately, the soil test came back bad. So couldn't do it there. So we're coming up with other solutions for them. But I believe the Alhambra mosque in Spain is rammed earth. And that's a beautiful building. With curvatures. It's not like ugly blocks only. You can do a lot with rammed earth.
You can do a lot. And again, the word is very indicative of what it is, everybody. It's taking usually fairly high quantity clay in terms of the kind of the soil it is, and packing it really tightly, but leaving some airspace because that's what actually gives it some insulative value. And then and then using that for the structure of your building. Adobe is a kind of an earth that a lot of structures so that's the surfacing on all the Santa Barbara architecture that you were talking about in most cases is Adobe.
Yeah, and what we do now, Wayne, just to let you know, because the problem with Adobe is that's what crumbled in the earthquake in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
So what we learned was if we took and take a little bit, not a lot of reinforcing steel rods, and you put them down the Adobe, like vertically into the Adobe, it'll keep it going. And so we rebuilt the Presidio, which was built originally in the 1700s, using Adobe, but with reinforcing rods to meet California code. And it is extremely stable and safe now.
Mark, do a little search for the Presidio. It's another structure.
Santa Barbara Presidio, yeah.
It's beautiful. So what would a typical day be for you these days? Because you and I are not the youngest guys on the block, and yet I think we're both still pretty active doing whatever we're up to. So tell us how a day in your life would go these days.
Somebody asked me, when are you going to retire? And I said, I'm not sure what that means, but if that means that we've succeeded with everything we're trying to accomplish and the world is sustainable, any day now. But until then, I got a job. What I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of writing. So for those who don't know, we have a free newsletter. I urge you to take it. It's called the World Business Academy. You can go to worldbusiness.org, sign up for a free copy, and you'll see all the different things that we do cutting edge work on. We're one of the most advanced, basically think tanks in renewable energy, have been since 2007, when we published a seminal book on the whole subject. We continue to be the leaders, I think, in methane. We were onto the methane problem 12 years ago and published extensively on it, what it's about, how to deal with it, debunking the fact that it's cow burps. It's not. It's the ocean hydrates are off-gassing methane at massive quantities now, and permafrost. We do a lot of education, trying to help the business community get to a better place. We are very, very advanced in all renewable energies, but particularly hydrogen. We are really good at what are called microgrids. And we've developed a plan for California a number of years ago, which you can see a video about on our site, for how we can convert the entire state of California. It's a true fact. In 10 years or less, or 100% green at less cost than we're currently spending for monthly electrical bills. So no capital cost at all, and a big refund at the end. So that's what we do. We are a think tank, occasionally think and do, but primarily a think tank. The rest of my day is I'm still basically full-time involved in business. So when I started the Academy, I made a statement that I thought business people ought to run their businesses for the benefit of society as well as their own pocketbook. So what I do is I'm still running a number of businesses. Candidly, because of my age, I'm starting to unwind it. I'm like letting them go one at a time. But those businesses have supported the Academy over all these years, along with the public. And so what I did is I took money from my businesses. Typically, I would give the founder's stock to the Academy. And the stock went up, the Academy won. I had no tax bill. So it's been a really great run. I do urge anybody who's interested in the Academy, you should look at the video he scrolled through on the first slide there of the Academy's homepage, because if you get through that video and you're still interested, you want to talk to us. If you don't get through that video, here it comes, this one right here. If that really gets you upset, you don't have to look at anything further. You're not going to like what you read. Because this is about personal responsibility. This is not waiting for someone to save us. It's like, wait a minute, we got to save ourselves. We're the business community. And I think that it's shocking, really, that the business community has been as reluctant as it should be for its own profitability to engage in the climate change dialogue in a serious way. Not all business, but many of us.
Rinaldo, take us back a little further. How did you tell us about your childhood a little bit, and how did you first start to get interested in this whole concept that you obviously are passionate about today?
I will. I just want to comment that I think what Alicia Rose said is absolutely correct. And what we did when we came up with the way to harness microgrids, Alicia, is we thought and we are certain it's the only way to harness green energy and not have to worry about a transition to the system we already have, because we recommended that each microgrid be based at the foot, if you will, of a current substation. So you can start trapping that solar and wind energy today, and in some places hydro, and in some places you can do it with geothermal. In fact, in many places. So if you do that, you will instantly start reducing the load on the grid. Every electron you create from the wind goes straight down its distribution system of Edison, and that's one less electron being made from fossil fuel. And that's the system we've suggested be implemented across the state of California. What got me started is the question, Wayne.
Mhm.
Well, I was
Yeah.
a 60s guy. So this will give you a hint at my age. I was basically one of the key student coordinators at UCLA and Berkeley in the 60s. And there isn't a good riot that I wasn't at. When I say riot, I mean, we were never rioting. We got beat up by the LAPD real bad on a regular basis. And there's some famous pictures of what happened to us in those days. But it worked. We were able eventually to stop a war that we thought was wrong. I think the world would now agree that was correct, that it was wrong. I think that, this is a new article coming out soon in World Pipelines. We publish a lot. In fact, if anybody is interested, and I really recommend it, I just did a series of 3 articles for Robot Report, which is the robot magazine, because I hold patents in quite a few different fields, but one of them is advanced AI robotics, generative AI robotics. And so they asked me to write up, could you write it up so laymen can understand what we do? And so I did. And those 3, I think the first one was published, I think, in April, and that's when they asked me to do the next 2. And the other 2 were July and August. So they just came out. And they're on our website. And why I'm recommending it is because I go to some links to explain to people what is basically advanced computer programming, which is what you usually see in factories, what is true artificial intelligence, and what is generative AI versus artificial intelligence. And so I try to break those apart so people can understand the 3 gradations. And when they understand it better, they'll be able to better sort through in their own mind with critical thinking what they see as the potential benefit and what they see as the potential pitfalls of robotics. So, for example, in my software, I've decided to build Asimov's 3 basic laws of robotics into all software. And as you know, the first law of robotics is never harm a human. No other company that I know of in my field is doing that yet, which I think is wrong. Okay, if you can't say to the algorithm, do what you want, but you got to stop if it harms a human, you don't care about the outcome. So when people get into these disputes about, oh, gee, could robots run away with us? Yeah, they could if you tell them you don't care what they do to you. And Wayne, you know what I always remind people? Who was Frankenstein's first victim? Dr.
Right.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yeah. But so take us back now. We were in the 60s. So now let's keep going.
Well, that was a very compelling time, and it impressed upon me that I needed to do more to try and help what I saw as the bigger problems. And the war was starting to come to an end. I went to law school, and I ended up opening the first storefront law in California because a friend of mine challenged me to do it. And he was such a big guy, I thought, okay, that's Ralph Nader, who, by the way, ended up writing the foreword for me to my to the book I did on what did I do? Which book did he write on? I have to remember now. Profiles in Power. Yes, he wrote that. So he wrote the foreword. But Ralph, I offered, because the professor told me he could get me in front of Ralph. I said, why don't we do Raiders Naders in California? And Ralph stopped in mid-stride and said, why you do it? I said, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm a first-year law student. He goes, so what? Do it. And he kept walking, just like that. And I said, well, maybe he's got a point. So I went back to my professor. I said, could you give me 10 units give me like 5 or 10 people, 10 units each for three months, and we're going to start West Coast Naders Raiders. And we called it the California Public Interest Law Center. One of my professors knew a guy named Mitchell Rogovin, who at the time was the head of the tax department under Kennedy, and it was a partner of Arnold and Porter. So he agreed to see me if I could borrow the money to fly back to Washington, which I did. And I borrowed the money. I had to have 2 cents to rub together because I had to work to get through law school. And he said, "Tell me what you want to do." And I told him, and I basically said what I was interested in, like caveat emptor. How do I help people like take care of themselves, protect themselves against egregious business policies? He said, "Okay, let me see what I can do for your exemption." 10 days later, I got it. So it's a great story. I can't tell you all the details. It's a fun story. You know, over a glass of wine, I'll tell you the whole story because it involves ladies of the evening. The only place I could get an office, I had to trade legal services for a guy who was running women upstairs. It was a very funny story. But we got through, and I took this one guy off the street who came in with reams of computer paper. And in the computer, his profiles in power. So he comes into my office, like which is basically two adjacent rooms in a motel on Wilshire and Sepulveda Boulevard, which today is the Federal Building. And he used to have this little two-story building, and there were ladies of the night running, rooms by the hour, and there was a little bar where they picked up guys or whatever. And then he needed me to do his legal work as a law student, but he had a law license. So I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you so many hours of a week. And in return, I need free rent from my law center because the dean won't let me have it in the law building anymore." Because Murray Schwartz, the dean, threw me out of the law building. In fact, he said to me, he says, "I know you're practicing law without a license, and I'll be damned if you're going to do it in my building." I said, "I'm not practicing law without a license. I'm just helping people sort through consumer choices." He said, "Get the hell out of here." Because at that time, by then I was like managing it at a law review. So I was working my law review desk, and my day job was like, helping people with consumer. So take on this case. And it's in front of the Public Utilities Commission. And it's the biggest case in the history of the United States. I sued AT&T's biggest subsidiary, which was Pacific Bell, defended by the largest law firm in the state of California, and argued at the lower, like you always do. You always lose at the PUC at the hearing level because the guy who does the hearing works for the PUC, right? That's who the judge is. He gets the same check as the guys you're arguing against. So yeah, I go up, I lose the appeal, et cetera. And eventually I took the case because there's a direct right of appeal to the Supreme Court when you get a final decision of the PUC in those days. So I took the case and I filed an appeal at the Supreme Court, and they accepted it. And in my third year of law school, I spent most of my time, working on that case, which they kept me busy. The firm I was fighting was this huge firm, and they decided that if they kept me so busy during the spring and summer, I wouldn't be able to take the bar review course. And if I didn't take the bar review course, I couldn't argue the case in February because you got admitted on February 9th, and this case was slated for February 22nd. So they did. They kept me very busy. It's a long story how I got through the bar, but I did. Anyway, we ended up getting, instead of 20 minutes, which is what you get for a case, we got 3 hours. And we were joined in the final appeal by the city of San Francisco, the city of Los Angeles, and the city of San Diego, who all joined our appeal at the end. None of them helped us at any place before that. And all three city attorneys from all three cities, when offered the opportunity to speak in front of the Supreme Court, chose not to because they didn't know the case. So it was really up to us, and we did. And that ended up being the largest class action victory in the history of the United States, $130 million. And and I demanded that we get the money back in checks. I didn't want credits on phone bills. I wanted them to return what they stole in cash. And then I argued separately for they should take 10% of the money, put it into a special fund. I would never take a penny. I never made a penny on that case. I wouldn't take a penny, but I wanted that to hire lawyers who would then be watchdogs over SoCal Edison from then on out, because clearly the PUC was not doing that. The court agreed to hear that. And we had like an hour argument on that one. Yeah, it was a case of first impression. And the court did me a favor. They said, interesting idea, but no for right now. So I didn't get that part, but I did get a 6-1 decision by the court, which is then and still is a better court than the U.S. Supreme Court by far. And the one guy, Justice McComb, who voted against me on that case, is the only justice in the history of California to be impeached for senility. He literally was bonkers. It's great. The guy's amazing. In the middle of a Supreme Court hearing, he forgot he was mic'd, right? He gets up, walks off to the side of the dais where there is a men's room for the justices. He goes in there, and I think it was, yeah, the other side was arguing, and they were talking, they were getting questions, and all of a sudden you hear this tinkle, 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 and the Chief Justice holds up his hands to stop the argument, right? We wait, then you hear this va-voom, the flush, right? And the Chief Justice goes, "You may continue, counsel." So I think it happened more than once. I don't think it just happened to me. And that company, by the way, that firm was Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro, which was the largest firm in California at the time. It's since gone on to be a large national firm, but it was a very big, and it had these huge clients, and it was a great case. So anyways, that case got me going, Wayne, because I realized I really didn't want to litigate anymore. I was 25 years old. I was the youngest guy to ever argue the Supreme Court, and I had the biggest decision of anybody who'd ever argued before the court. And I realized that won't work, because there's a platoon of lawyers working on the next thing to cheat the public. And there's another platoon of guys behind that. And they're funded with endless capital because they play the politics game. So I thought, okay, the only way to stop this, and this is classic Bucky Fuller, don't try to fix the other guy's broken machine, build one of your own. And so I decided, okay, I'll go learn business. Now, I was the guy in law school who had the very wide ties and a full beard and worked part-time in the draft center. I was not the guy who you would, genuinely speaking, look to hire in a patent leather shoe firm, although I did get offers from them. So I ended up deciding I didn't take enough commercial law. I took one class. I didn't take enough of the stuff you're supposed to take. You're going to be a real serious business lawyer. And so I get out and I go, okay, I guess I'm going to have to do this anyway. And I started, and I asked myself, it was after the McGovern campaign, and I said, okay, what am I really mad at? What's bothering me that I would like to? And I came up with three things: big oil, nuclear energy, and television. And so I decided of the three, the worst was television.
Oh,
yeah, because, and I'll tell you what, television back then, this would have been 1972, 72. Television was, and I had just been admitted to the bar in February. Didn't have the results of the case yet, but I was pretty sure I'd won. And so now I'm like, I'm unemployed still. I wasn't working part-time during the case, so I was really out of cash. And I needed to make some money. So I got to get a job. But sooner or later, you got to grow up and get a job. So and I was married, so I definitely had to get a job. My wife reminded me of that. So okay, what am I going to do? So I decided I was maddest at TV. And the reason is this: in 1972, if you recall, there were three networks: ABC, NBC, CBS. Indistinguishable programming. All of it was mindless. And it occurred to me that what was happening was that we were going to work every day, inventing more and more sophisticated technologies with greater and greater destructive potential. And at night, we were tuning in and turning off. So our humanity was not growing at the speed of our technology. And when the two got separated far enough, you'd have nuclear winter, right? It would snap. So I said, okay, I got to go into business. And if I'm going to go into business, I want to go into television. And I was offered a position with the very first company that wanted to do pay TV commercially. It was called Optical Systems Corporation on the West Olympic Boulevard. And they had this whole idea how they were going to do it. And so I had done some homework, and I knew that the two attempts to try pay TV had failed in Etobicoke, Canada, and Cheviot Hills, California. And I analyzed, and I said, well, the reason they failed was they had to pay for all the lines to the houses. So what if we went to a cable TV station, rented excess capacity from them, because there's all kinds of channels they're not using, we pay them a monthly fee, and we get to show movies for a fee on cable. So we picked the largest cable system in the world at that time, Mission Cable in San Diego, and we designed a system to be able to sell movies for the 12 movies a month for $13.95, as I recall. And so I'll never forget the first weekend we were actually out in the walking in San Diego, and what was the name of the little town? I have to think of it. It was it'll come to me. But anyway, in this little town, it was part of the cable system and the mission system, and we started selling movies for free, knocking on doors, right? On these little houses, little part. And everybody told us no one would ever be willing to pay for TV because they got such great TV for free. But we knew that wasn't true. We knew what they got, and there's an incredible story you should know about. The real founders of over-the-air television were advertising guys. And their way of approaching it was, we can't make programs so good that people get mad at the commercials because that's what we're in business to sell. We're here to sell Coca-Cola, fellas. Let's not forget that.
Right.
We are here so that when you go down the aisle, you reach for the can of Coke because you saw it on TV. If you make it so that they hate you showing them the can of Coke, we go broke. So it's got to be good enough that they want to stick through the commercial, but not so good that they would be mad at the commercial. And that was formerly called least objectionable programming. And that particular concept is been studied after I did it, but when I was doing it as well, as basically mass mind washing. It's mass mind washing. That's what they were doing. And so it occurred to me and my associates that if we could start a system where people cared enough to demand what we showed them, we would be returning initiative to them. In other words, return the power to the people on the other side of the tube. And we had a theory, I wrote a memo, all the different stations that we thought would emerge that would be economically affordable and desirable. Weather TV, Ted Turner did sports out of Atlanta. We figured R-rated movies. We figured, we never figured X, but we did figure on R. We figured on, because a lot of movies in those days were R, that were like good movies, but just had an R rating. And then we had at least 15 others that I think we mentioned at that time that we thought people would subscribe to if we could prove the concept. So we put 100% of the expense on the first channel, which was movies. We paid for all the expense to put the decoder boxes on an individual home. We rented the cable from the cable company for a particular frequency. And then we paid the cable company, Cox was the cable company in Michigan. We paid them, and I gave them their choice. I said, we'll pay you $500 a month and 15% of our profits, or $1,000 a month and no participation. And he laughed at me and said, we'll take the $1,000 a month because you'll be broke inside of 6 months anyway. Not one of the things that turned out to be true, because pay TV went on to be this enormous thing. Yeah. I am proud to say I did not leave that industry, and I pledged I would not leave television until at least one TV network lost its independence. And it turned out all three did before I left. So none of them are independent networks anymore. And by the way, they're all on the downside. They're skidding. Cable TV was the big first initial tranche that really hurt them, particularly pay TV, and which is basically Cox, right? They became a pay TV company. But what also, and we also helped, one of my buddies was starting a company in New York who wanted to do the same thing under the name of Home Box Office. And we were able to get, because I had all these connections in Hollywood from the campaign, we were able to get a really great guy, Eddie Rubin, he was the father of my classmate, Larry, who was a really interesting top student. Anyway, Eddie was the head of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. So he knew all the studio chiefs. And Eddie said, yeah, I'll represent your company. That's really intriguing. So I said, but I can't pay yet, Eddie. He goes, you will eventually. Let's go see what we can do. And he got the studios after a period of knocking on doors and taking me around to Stolberg at Fox and everybody else. And Hy Martin at Universal Studios was the first guy to ever agree to sell us a picture for sale on cable without commercials. And it was a 10-picture package. And so Chuck Dolan, who was starting HBO in New York, had one of his guys call me and say, hey, we heard you broke through, you were able to get him to rent you movies. Would you be willing to give us the identical contract? We'll just scratch your name out, put ours in, we'll rent it for whatever you agreed to pay. And I said, sure. And they said, you would do that for a competitor? I said, oh, of course, because my goal is not to corral an industry. My goal is to get a change. So you guys go in business, I go in business. Pretty soon, a lot of people go in business, and I can stop worrying about it because nature will take its course. And of course, it did. And that's been a hallmark of my career. I've never stuck in a place just so I can make more money. And I've never worked in a company for a paycheck. In other words, I always had to have an ulterior motive. In this case, it was change the face of broadcasting. Um, that led to some other things I ended up doing. That it's a longer story, but it's a great story. I'm very proud of it. I was
Yeah.
one of the four co-founders of the Gorbachev Foundation with Gorbachev himself, Mikhail Sergeyevich. In fact, Mikhail Gorbachev also wrote a flyleaf for me on the profiles in power, along with Nader. But it's my life is about trying to make a difference. And I don't play for the audience, and I don't play for the normal business return, which is capital. It comes anyway. So I've never been starving, and I'm not worried about, my kids going penniless. But I never wanted to work the system to enrich myself. So everything I kept going from one to the next was always like, what needs to happen next and why? And that's how I got into hydrogen. That's how I got into renewable energy. I got into organic food 35 years ago when nobody wanted to get in it. They said it was crazy. Why would you pay 25% extra when you can get it from, you can buy Wonder Bread? Why would you buy something with seeds in it? And so, it's like these things are funny after a while, but they're true. And typically, what people resist today, if they survive, change will overtake them. And so you need a few change agents. I think it helps to have a few guys like me that are really dedicated to making the change, who have the business tools. But I think it would happen if I weren't here. It just so happens I am. And if I am, is that old saying, if not me, who? If not now, when? And that's what Dennis Weaver was like. Dennis took it on personally. He took the environment on personally, as you know. And
Dennis used to say, the only reason I act is to make enough money so I can help make the planet better. I mean, it
yeah,
wasn't for.
yeah, that's why I do business. Well, I do another reason too. I'm trying to create new models. So when I demonstrate you can put together solar panels that will equal a peaker plant, so you don't need a peaker plant, that's
Yeah,
making a difference. That's a
yeah.
business thing, right? It's not just academic. It's a very interesting long story. I won't get into all of it, but I've been blessed to have done some really wonderful things. And as a result, Wayne, I've had this really good fortune of getting to work with people, really legendary people who have had a profound effect on me. I mean, I worked with Gorbachev for 6 years indirectly, 4 years very directly. I got to work with Mother Teresa for the last 10 years of her life directly, and was the only person authorized by her to distribute the film of her life, which I helped to
Wow.
fund and produce. Yeah, yeah, we were very close. She knew my kids by first name. She knew my wife. We were close. And the day she passed, I took all the rights I had collected, none of which I ever made a penny from because I always kept giving it back, and I turned it over to the Missionary Sisters of Charity at the Mother House in Calcutta, and they now have it. They own it. And so and when people say, "Well, why would you do that?" I go, I'm going to die someday. Everybody does. And I want to be able to
Well,
look back
have
and
they
say,
done anything? Has there been? I don't know that there's been a memoir yet on film for Mother Teresa. Has there
oh, yeah,
been?
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's called Mother Teresa's the film. God, yes, we brought it out 20 years ago, at least 25 maybe.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's a fab. And by the way, it's wonderful. The reason she wanted me to do with her was she knew I wouldn't change it. This is her story told her way. It's unbelievably fabulous. I think you might still be able to get it on Amazon. If you
Okay.
can't, Wayne, let me know and I'll get you a flash drive or something. But no, it's a
Okay.
great story, and it talks about how she came to who she was. I mean, she was the greatest entrepreneurial success story of all time. By the way, look at that picture right there, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Touris was the leading evolutionary biologist on the planet 25, 30 years ago. Just passed away. But a brilliant, brilliant mind. And one of the people she mentored was Ginny Benris, who's a fellow of the Academy also, who did the whole biodiversity thing, bioengineering. So the whole bioengineering field came out of that lineage. And so you'll see people on our website who really were amazing people, who some of the fellows have passed away, some are still with us. People like the dean of the Kellogg School of Business, for example, has been a fellow a long time. Deepak Chopra, many others. And the hallmark of the Business Academy is people would say, well, why would an evolutionary biologist be on? Why would you have Deepak Chopra? And all of these are kind of good questions in the abstract, but bad questions if you think through. It's the diversity of the opinion feeding into the business system that I thought could make the best difference. And I think it has.
So we're about 5 minutes before we sort of are honored to our audience and others to be on an hour, and to you. And tell us right now what the kinds of things our audience can do to help. Obviously, and our audience is probably a lot of people with not a lot of money, but a lot of talent and a lot of interest in the planet and such. But tell us some things that we should be doing and that we could help the Academy with.
So I complimented Alicia Rose for her comment. I want to come back to that because there's one thing in there, Alicia, that I don't agree with, and I'd urge you to get a hold of the Academy. We have a really great expert in nuclear. We are very much against SMRs, or small modular reactors. Very familiar with them, been studying them since they first were conceived of. As you probably know, if you follow the field, only one's ever been built. It's operating in China. No one knows what's happening with it. One was supposed to go online and Russia hasn't. There's talk of one going on somewhere else. But SMRs are a technology that I do not believe is sustainable. It's not good for the planet. It has all the same waste disposal issues, and frankly is more dangerous because the theory behind SMRs, if you don't know it, is we can make them so fast on an assembly line that we can make a profit by punching them out rather than by building them one at a time where they always lose money. We're happy to share our information with you freely. People come to us for all kinds of things like this. We're experts in SMR and nuclear. Happy to share that with you. That's what the Academy does. That was a real live demo. That's what we do. And number one thing, Wayne, that I say to people is critical thinking. Be critical of what you're reading, what you're seeing, and try to distill it get the most information you can. I call it kaleidoscopic thinking. Get as many different pieces in the kaleidoscope as you can, and then see what picture emerges. But if you don't do it with critical thinking, you will start swallowing gobs of basically self-promotion and frankly terrible stuff on the internet. So, and it's ridiculously bad science usually. Example, right today, people are all abuzz at Twitter with who will get the blame for the shutdown. That isn't even the right question. The right question is, what will the people of the United States do in 3 months when inflation is up another 2 points or one, when the unemployment rate has gone up, when it's clear the economy is tanking, where the entire global economic system is in jeopardy? Oh, and yes, the government of the United States is shut down, but it was sort of shut down before it shut down. So the real question is, who are we going to turn to get our life back, to get control of the country we live in, so it's the democracy we started with and not the autocracy that we have ended up with? And the answer is critical thinking. So, and I always say to people, don't believe me, do your own thinking. Do your own thinking. Take me as a source if you want, and take other sources, but then really test it in the crucible of your own logic. That'll get you through this mess, if anything will. And we are in some very tough economic times. Clearly, the cheapest form of electricity right now is probably solar. Wind is a close second. Both are being killed off at the state and federal level. That's crazy at a time when electrical rates are growing up through the roof. The idea of the grid itself is completely old-fashioned, 1880s, got to go, and replaced with microgrids, which would be tied into the existing local distribution system at the substation level. I mean, you can go on and on. So there's all of these things, and the Academy publishes extensively. And if anybody sees an article we've ever published that they don't agree with a single footnote, write us. Call us. Tell us. Because if we got it wrong, we'd like to know and we'll fix it. Now, I can tell you, in everything I've ever written, I've done 4 books, about 150 opinion pieces, 1,000-word opinion ed pieces, probably 45 major articles, and God knows how many podcasts and interviews. I have never had anybody yet challenge one of my footnotes. Not one. And not since 85. And I say that not because I'm the smartest guy in the world. It's because I do my homework. And before I conclude something, I do a lot of critical thinking. And then I go, okay, this will probably be the right way to look at it. And if I'm wrong, my friends are the people who tell me the truth. They say, hey, Rinaldo, you got that wrong. Okay, wow. Tell me factually how I got it wrong. Tell me there is a way to dispose of nuclear waste that doesn't pose a threat for 1,000 years. Remember, Gorbachev was one of my good friends. And he would have told you before he died, he told me the biggest failure on his watch was Chernobyl. And he said that because he believed that what he was being told for the first 5 days instead of immediately jumping in. Okay, so I understand what it's like to be engaged in the nuclear world at a high level. And I understand how the costs of nuclear are constantly being shifted to the public because private industry would never support nuclear if they weren't basically guaranteed they could never be sued. And if they weren't guaranteed a profit no matter what from the local utility. This is socialism at its worst. It's a technology that gets funded to do terrible damage to society because the capital system won't support it. Anyway, so I guess the way I would end it is,
Great.
we are the land. I love that line. We're the land of the free and the home of the brave. Everybody needs to get brave now.
Brave. Get brave.
Get brave. The freedom only comes if you're brave. It's land of the free and home of the brave, right? It's not home of the free. Stop.
Yeah, that's right.
Land of the brave. Let's be brave.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, what a great way to end. Are you seeing this as a little side? But we take all of our webinars and turn them into shorts now, and we use AI to help us get it done. You can never predict it, but we'll get one or two of our 20 shorts that we take out of a 60-minute situation that'll go viral, and they won't be the ones that you think that have a chance. I will tell you, Mark, I think the home of the free, land of the brave, home of the free, land of the brave.
No, land of the free, home of the brave.
Land of the, I keep, that's one of the things getting old doesn't help me with is I get words jumbled more often than I get anything else. But yes, that might go viral on us, everybody. So that's cool. Thank you so much, Rinaldo. Please, let's make sure we stay in touch. I don't get back to SoCal as much as I'd like, but you're giving me more and more excuses too. I got a couple grandchildren there that get me up to the Lake Arrowhead area, but I used to surf all the time at Rincon when I lived in Lancaster. So haven't been there in a while. So
Wayne, we've got a great little guest house. Come on up and visit. We'll put you up overnight, and that way you won't have to drive all the way to Arrowhead in one shot. And I'd love to. I've never ever been to a llama ranch.
Oh, you need to come. That's where you got to get. Yes, all right. And they're alpacas, by the way.
Alpaca.
And they are a little just smaller than a llama. So, and they can actually interbreed. They're the same species. So they not that long back, probably 5,000 years or so is when they really started to break. So anyway, thank you, Rinaldo. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Shannon, who I know helped Rinaldo here, who's his staff person. And thank you, audience. We've enjoyed it. And Mark,